Welcome to another edition. So here I have the kit base disassembled, and this is the electronics board here that controls the wings and lights and the speaker, and this battery compartment, which I will not be using. Just these portions I will be using and mixing with my electronics. And this is the top of the base where it attaches to the X-Wing, and I've taken this apart and I've mapped out the colored wires to which corresponding numbered pin they attach to. And what I've done here is I have the pins from the base attached to the correct pins over on the motor and electronics portion, and as you can see here, when I turn it on, I'm getting voltage going to everything. And you can see I've got my engine lights lit here. Got my cockpit light. And I wrote down the colored wires and the associated pin. And what I'm going to do here is just by process of elimination figure out what they all do. So I'm going to unplug my first wire here, and all the lights are lit, so it obviously is not affecting the engines. The light for the torpedo works. The wings are not opening and closing. So that wire there works in conjunction with the opening and closing of the wings. And you can see if I hook the wire back up here, you can see now when I press the button, the wings open, press again, and the wings close. So that would be this wire here. And now I'm just going to continue on and start checking the other wires, and there are 8 of them all together. And I'm just going to go through process of elimination and push some buttons and see what happens here. Alright, so this one here clearly is power for the engine and cockpit light, yet the torpedo still works and the wings still work. So that is purely power to the engine and cockpit lights, which is good to know since I will be replacing those with my own. Okay, so I am now done going through all the wires here, and here's what I found out about the pins and what they do and the corresponding colored wires. And you can feel free to pause this and check it out if any of you are interested in trying to do any of this yourself. So now I've taken the screws out of the motor and electronics part, and I'm going to take a look and see what we got here and how I can attach my wires to this board inside the motor housing. And I've got it all hooked up here again, and I've labeled the pins in the board itself inside the motor housing. And because I know now which pin is providing power to the cockpit and engine lights, which is 2 pins over here, I'm going to do a test right now with some alligator clips and attach my light. There's the cockpit light that comes with the kit, and there is my white light that I will be using and replacing the cockpit light with. So that works out great, and I know I can power my light right off the board here. And these engine lights, you can see they run in through the wings, and they run through here inside, and then they attach to the board inside. So I will need to replace these with mine, and there's a little tab here that pops out, and the wires run right through there, and it conceals the wires. So I'm finishing up my cockpit here, and I've got the top portion of the front of the cockpit, and I'm going to put some lights down this center here. So I'm drilling some holes in to put some fibers through. In the film there's some red and yellow lights down that gray strip you see there in the center. So I'm just going to start drilling some holes down, and like you see here, and then I'm going to run my 1/4 millimeter colored fibers through here, and I have some red and yellow fibers, and you can see that the fiber fits right inside there. So you can see on the back side here where the holes come through for the fibers, and there's these 2 holes in the front that I had to cut out a section here that holds the light so that these 2 holes in the front, the fibers could be lit by the LED. You can see here when I put the LED in there how I just cut out that little section there so that the 2 fibers will be illuminated when that sits inside there. So I've glued my first 2 fibers in place, and I just glue my fibers in with regular old Elmer's glue. It seems to hold them in pretty well. And then I chopped them down, as you can see here, so that the LED will rest right up against them when it's put in place. I've also painted the whole underside white, and I've also painted the LED holder portion white as well, so that when it's in place all the light will illuminate the photo etch that's coming out of the front. Now I just need to put in the other fibers. What I've done here is I put a little bend in my fiber so that when it's put inside the hole it will bend back, and I can put the fiber up against the LED. And you can see here I have one in place, and you can see how it moves back towards the LED, and I'm going to cut it right about here so that it'll be right up against the tip of the LED. So I've got all of my fibers in place and cut, and I have these 2 red fibers which are going to run to some blinking LEDs. So back to the side panels where I cut here, I'm going to fill this hole in with a little bit of styrene. You can see here I've glued the styrene in place, and I've also done the same for the other side of the cockpit. So I've put the cockpit into the bottom of the X-Wing, and you can see here there's a lot of room underneath the cockpit. And I'm going to run my wires through this little hole here in the motor portion of the X-Wing and put all my wiring and all underneath here, underneath that cockpit gap. And again, here you can kind of see it from a different angle. There's a good amount of area there where I'm going to be able to stash some wires. I'm even planning on using some little 1.5 millimeter plugs as well to fit inside there. So I've cut this little piece out of a breadboard, and I'm going to have my positive and negative running down the 2 sets of holes. And I'm just going to take this little chunk, which fits right in the bottom portion of the cockpit here, and I'm going to squeeze it in there and then glue it into place. So I've also added another piece of styrene here, closing off my light box, as you can see, and I have a little hole here for my SMD LED to fit in, and it's all going to be enclosed inside this little light box. And I've done the same for the other side of the cockpit and have a hole for my SMD LED. And here, you know, I have the LED, just a little test. You can see it lights it all up. This is my LED that I've soldered with a resistor to replace this yellow cockpit light that comes with the kit, which I'm going to cut off right at the tip there and get rid of. And then I'm going to use my LED that I have here, which will fit right inside this LED holder that comes with the kit. And it goes right in this area of the cockpit. and then my wires will fit right underneath. They'll go right through this little trench area here, which is meant for the wires from the kit. And then my wires are cut to length to go to my positive and negative strips that I will put in my breadboard. Here is an SMD LED, which will fit right inside of my little light boxes, which I have now painted the outside of them a dark gray to block any light leakage, and it'll just fit right in place right there. And then I will take the wires and I'll cut them to length, and they will then also be soldered to my positive and negative leads on my breadboard. So I have my SMDs Elmer glued into place, and I have my wires cut to length. I'm going to run them to my breadboard, and here you can see I've got the negative from my SMDs running to my negative strip, my positives going to a little resistor here to my positive strip, and also I have my center console LED wired in place. So I'm going to hook up my negative lead and my positive lead here and do a little test of my lighting and wiring. And as you can see, the side consoles are lit and the center console. So here I have the targeting computer with my little screen that I had put on there earlier. I'm going to drill that out now and put an SMD inside there. So I'm going to carefully drill a little hole in the front here, not all the way through, just to make a hole. And you can see here I've made my hole, and the SMD will fit right inside there. And I drilled a hole through the side. The SMD is in there, my wiring running out through the little hole on the side, and a little test, and you can see it lights up. In the movie you can see here there's wires coming out of the targeting computer that are kind of coiled. So my plan is to take the two wires and just wrap them around each other and kind of get that effect, and then paint them gray. Here I've printed out my screen, which I'm going to glue back in place. Here I've wrapped my wires and painted them gray. So here I have my cockpit, and I've put my pilot inside. And I'm going to attach my LED holder to the bottom portion here, and I have my fibers running through there for the blinking LEDs. And I'm going to bring the center top down on the LED holder, and then run my blinking fibers down through some holes I drilled through the bottom of the cockpit. And I'm going to put the center portion in place here. And again, another quick little test. You can see everything is mounted in place. And bam! Center console lights, side console lights. And you can see the strip of LEDs down the center top there. And here it is with the two alternating blinking LEDs as well. So now it's time to run my targeting computer through. Drilled a little hole in the back of the cockpit here for my wires to run through. And then I'm going to mount the targeting computer into place in the cockpit. And my leads have been soldered to the bottom portion for the targeting computer. You can see everything is now wired up, and I've also attached a little plug here to power my board. And there's my fibers for the blinking LEDs, which I still need to attach secure to the outside of the cockpit. But another little test here, and I'm going to check out, and center sides are lighting up as well as the targeting computer. So here I have my blinking SMD LED, and it's self-blinking, as you can see right here. So my plan is to take a small piece of shrink tube like this, and then put the LED inside the shrink tube, shrink it down to hold the LED in place, and then my fiber will run in the other side and it'll go right up against the LED. So I've shrunk it down here, as you can see, and I have it plugged in, and you can see that the light is blinking inside this little tube here. So then what I can do is run my fiber in there and it'll catch the blinking light. And you can see here the little light blinking on the top of my cockpit. So I've glued the one LED here with the fiber and the other LED here with the fiber running into it. And you can see here that both the LEDs are blinking and out of sequence, which is what I want. So I'm going to do a full test of my cockpit now to make sure everything is working. And everything is on. And what I love about this is that it's all self-contained within the cockpit. Everything is just right there. The whole thing plops into the model, and it's all running off my one cable of hot and ground. So just to see how it looks, I'm going to put my cockpit into the bottom portion here of the X-Wing body. And it just fits right in there. And you can see from this angle, there's still quite a bit of room underneath the cockpit, between the cockpit and the body. Room for my connectors, the one to power the cockpit and the other to power my engine lights. And then I put the top on just to see how it's going to look and turn it on. And it's looking good. I'm very pleased with how this has turned out. You know, the targeting computer lights up well, everything is lighting up, and it looks great. So in my next video, I'll be continuing on, probably getting into prepping the body and prepping for wiring up the wings. So thanks for watching.